Hi, this is Matthew. This is the book, A Comprehensive Prophet's Manual, and this is chapter 42, Hearing the Father Speak. And this is chapter 42 of 55 that will be on the playlist. So I encourage you to look up my playlists and start from the very beginning of this book. I first uh, got to know Jesus in my relationship with God. For many years, I only spoke to Jesus. I didn't have a good relationship with my own father, and it took a lot of healing in my life to reach a stage where I could relate to God the Father. But one day I was speaking to Jesus back and forth in my bedroom, and Jesus said he wanted me to speak to the Father and speak to his Father. And so I started to speak to his Father, and I slowly developed a relationship with God. My relationship with God isn't as strong as I have a relationship with Jesus, but it is stronger than most people. Um, I was speaking to God saying that I haven't really known him and spoken to him much in my life. And God said to me, while ever I've been speaking to Jesus, I've been speaking to him. And that was a revelation. John 17 says, I in him and him in us. Uh, and that goes on to say that uh, Jesus and God and we are all one together. And so there was a little bit of foundation in the fact that God and Jesus are one, and Jesus said, I'm in the Father, and Jesus said, He and the Father are one. So I understood when God said to me that I'd been speaking to Him all my life, I could understand what He was saying. I sat down and started to type messages to God, and I asked Him questions and typed His answers. And um, I used the format of my book, Jesus Speaking Today, and I used the 67 topics of that and did about 15 topics per book, and did books with um, conversations with God um, with 15 topics in each. You can come out, Rodney. Um, I did conversations with 15 topics in each, and uh, did three books: Conversations with God, Book One, Book Two, Book Three, and I really developed a good relationship with God during those sessions, and people who've read those books of mine have been really blessed and loved the fact that I wrote them. And there's plenty of good 5-star reviews of people commenting how blessed they were reading them. And so I really recommend uh, journaling with God. I recommend getting a piece of paper and writing questions to God and writing down His answers. I really highly recommend you journaling with God and letting God speak to you, and being blessed by what He has to say. Uh, God is he's he's got an authority in His voice, which is there's more authority in his voice than the voice of Jesus. And as you develop a relationship with the Godhead, you're able to hear the different resonance of your thought, that you hear uh, a message of God or a message of Jesus or a message of the Holy Spirit. You're able to recognize the resonance on the thought and tell whether it's God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit speaking to you. But that takes time. It takes a while to develop the ability to know the difference between Jesus and God. But like anything, when you're a mother, for instance, you learn the voices of your children and your husband. You're able to tell when your husband comes home and hear his voice, and you can have 4 children and know the different voices of each of your children. You can have your back turned to them, and one of them can come and ask you a question, and you have your back turned and you know which child it is. The same is true for God. You can know when God's speaking. You can know when Jesus is speaking or the Holy Spirit is speaking. Um, God is a real comfort to have an understanding that He's not an angry, vengeful God, but He's a loving, compassionate, kind, forgiving, merciful God. That may be news to some people. Some people may not understand God as being someone that's loving and merciful and kind and forgiving, but God is certainly that way with people. And when you get to know Him for who He really is, He can present that way. Um, some people only know God as an angry God. Some people only know God to be a God of wrath and judgment, and one that barks orders, and that may be true of what people perceive to be the God of the Old Testament, but God is very loving and kind and merciful, and and when you get to know Him for who He really is, and you've had conversations with Him, then you can really get to experience His love and His compassion and His kindness. Uh, I've been forgiven for so many thousands of sins in my life, and uh, it's been said in the Bible that he that has been forgiven much loves much, and Jesus said that to the woman who washed his feet, or said that about the woman who washed his feet with her tears. And I truly have uh, sinned much and have been forgiven much, and so I really love much. And God has been part of that equation. He's been the one that's been forgiving me, and so it's a wonderful experience to experience the voice of God. And uh, sometimes when I prophesy, God speaks through me. Most often, when I prophesy, it's the voice of Jesus that speaks through me, and most people get a prophecy off Jesus. But from time to time, God will speak, and I've heard God speak through me in corporate prophecies, and so. But it's important to know the voice of God. It's important to recognize and be able to discern the voice of God, and God is someone who you can all benefit from getting to know.